It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Joe Stanhope. I'm a Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. We provide data advisory, syndicated research to help enterprise leaders develop and execute their customer growth strategies. I'm privileged to sit on Forrester's business-to-consumer marketing research team, where I cover marketing technology, which is how I got into CDPs and why we're all here. Just want to thank Treasure Data team for inviting me to be here again. And for throwing such an amazing event. I've been a CMO myself. I've run big events. It is a lot of work to make it look this easy and smooth and wonderful to create this experience for all of us. So I truly appreciate them. Today I want to talk about what we've seen going on in the CDP market, why it's important, how it's evolved, and sort of a call to action, throwing down the gauntlet and starting to think about where we can take the CDP in the future. But first, I want to start with Formula One racing. I'm a Formula One fan. Do we have any fans? Any Formula? Excellent. I've been a fan for about 15 years. Was dragged to a race kind of involuntarily in 2009. I had no preconceived notion of the sport at all. I went, I saw it, and like many sports, when you see it live, it's a very different experience, right? And it's much more fun, honestly, to see most sports live. And it was like this with Formula One for me. I saw it, it kind of broke my brain, and now I've been into it for many, many years. What you see before you is the McLaren team's 2024 race car. It's very fancy and cool and colorful looking. Neat that they're sponsored by Google, and they have like the hubcaps in Google Chrome colors. Very clever marketing there. But this is great, a big Lando Norris fan, which is their main driver. I think those guys are great. So I've gotten into the sport, and I really enjoy it. I think what I kind of like about it is it kind of brings my left and right brains together, right? Of course, there's the joy of motorsport, the thrill of speed, the skill of being an amazing driver at beautiful tracks, but also the engineering and the R&D that goes into these vehicles is incredible. Right, running a Formula One team, it's about several $100 million a year, 1,000 or more employees. They are large companies that are dedicated to creating these amazing vehicles. And there is a lot of money at stake in sponsorships and prize money, the branding that comes with it, and so on. So it's very, very serious. It is undoubtedly the pinnacle of motorsport. Now, again, these cars are nothing like what you and I drive at home. Even if we have fancy cars, and sporty cars at home, these are next-level vehicles. The engines run around 1,000 horsepower, max out right now around 15,000 RPM. Go from 0 to 60 in about 2.5 seconds. It's essentially a land-based rocket or a drag racer. What's fun is they do the second 60 miles an hour in about 2 seconds. They're actually faster the more they get going. They top out over 200 miles an hour. And Formula One racetracks, actually, they're not just an oval. They're designed, they have lots of twists and turns and road courses and so on. So they're both designed for straight line speed, right, which we see here, but also to handle corners very, very, very quickly. So they can pull 6 Gs of load on the driver as they go through these corners because they basically don't slow down. The drivers of these cars are world-class athletes. Some of them do triathlons simply to stay in shape. Pretty impressive. So they work very hard, have incredible neck muscles to stand up to those G-forces. Now, as you can imagine, they like measuring things in Formula One, and they do the things that we might expect. They try to figure out how fast are you going at any given time on the track, and they're trying to figure out things like, how fast can I go through every corner? Where do I brake before going into a corner? What's the right drive line? All those things are very sensible, but that's really only the start of what they measure in Formula One. They basically track and measure every conceivable thing that you could measure on a car. Suspension travel, the aerodynamic elements, the tires, the engine, the transmission, every part, the battery systems, the driver inputs, everything gets measured. There's a standard data collection system that the sport gives to the cars. And they hook those up to several hundred sensors, which track hundreds of parameters. That adds up, as you might imagine. About 5 billion measurements per race. Keep in mind, they're essentially moving their data center to 24 different locations over the course of 10 months every year. You think running one data center is hard? Try moving it to a different continent every other week. And then they're using that data. We're not collecting data for fun, right? We're using this data to optimize the car, again, because we are a competitive sport here. Every year in the off-season, they completely redesign their car based on their learnings, based on changes in the rules. And when we say formula in Formula One, it's literally a formula for the car. There's a big fat book that says everything that the car has to be designed within. That also then defines, of course, the white space where the teams can get creative to build an edge in their vehicle. Weekly, they make changes based on what they've learned as well. It's not unusual for teams to show up at the next track with new elements, and sometimes we can see them like new aerodynamic pieces, like new wings that they're attaching to the cars, or a lot of it's underneath the hood too. Could be software, could be engine changes, transmissions, whatever it might be. And they're making changes on the fly, settings of the car, little physical tweaks. Sometimes the drivers have certain preferences. The weather might influence how they set up a car, or even the track itself. Some tracks have longer straightaways, some tracks have more turns or tighter turns, and they have to make adjustments for that. So they're really continuously optimizing based on this vast amount of data, and it's very, very impressive. Now, to me, that starts to sound very familiar. It starts to sound like marketing. And this could be my brain damage, because I've spent my whole career in the marketing space. But when we talk about, oh, we have a very dynamic environment that loads up a lot of data that we're continuously using to drive performance, that does feel like marketing to me. Maybe that's why I love Formula One so much, because it feels very familiar to me. Now, when we think about marketing, what I like to do is actually make sure our North Star is focused on the customer. The reason we're all here at the end of the day, and it's super cool to talk about CDPs and data and the analytics and all the guts and the ones and zeros of what we're doing here. But what is the end result? Our end goal here, of course, is to drive great customer experiences. And when we think about that, we've got to think about the customer. And customers are certainly changing and evolving. They're empowered. They're connected. If you don't want to think about it in terms of your own customers, think about it in terms of yourself. Everyone here is a consumer, right? We have vast amounts of information. We all effectively have a supercomputer in our pocket or our bag in the form of our phones. We have self-efficacy. We advocate for ourselves as consumers. We have an idea of what we want, what we feel we deserve. When we don't get that, let's admit it, we get a little bit grumpy about it, right? And we want to go get what we think we want, right? And we're willing to go to great lengths to do that. We've shown that we're willing to experiment. A great example is how we consume media now. We don't go and buy a bunch of DVDs typically anymore. Can't even tell you the last time I used my DVD player. We've pretty much converted from perpetually owning a physical piece of media to having a streaming service where we call up what we want to watch. And of course, we use more devices more often. And as consumers, we have tremendously high expectations for the brands we do business with. As consumers, we don't really see a difference between digital and physical experiences. We expect them to be contiguous, consistent. We expect brands and marketers to essentially be, let's say, omniscient, right? To know what we want, what we've done in the past, how we've engaged across all these different channels. That's a pretty standard expectation and perhaps reasonable from a consumer's point of view. Our research at Forrester shows that we're engaging more and more broadly than ever. Consumers use over 4 devices across 4 platforms, over 5 channels. What this does is it generates essentially an infinite set of permutations in where we engage with consumers. Now, the marketers out there are going to say, this is amazing and I love it, because the true marketer always wants to have more and better ways to engage with a customer. They love a situation where the customer wants to come to them, right? You're the advocate in your organization for the customer, and you want to reach them. And so this can be quite exciting. It is, of course, disruptive, though, too, because everyone already has a day job. We already have a set of technologies. Adding new channels, new platforms, new devices is not nearly as easy as it sounds. You know, it's essentially rebuilding that car while it's driving kind of work. And it's constant iteration. What it really tells us is that we have to engage with customers in their moments. At Forrester, we think about moments essentially as the atomic element of customer engagement. It's that time and space where a person interacts with a brand to get what they want immediately and in context. And this is what we're moving towards. This is what all those different channels and devices give us. And it's very exciting. I think most marketers get on board with this pretty quickly because it actually opens up the aperture of where marketing and customer engagement works in the customer lifecycle, because those moments are all around us. They're kind of in the ether, flying by us right now. It's essentially we have to just grab them and be ready to use them and engage in those moments. And we can do those moments, arrange those moments, anywhere the customer engages with us. So this gets us out of a kind of the historical and somewhat damaging paradigm of marketing just as acquisition or paid media, or marketing just as customer marketing and email. This gets us into a world where marketing handles moments across a customer life cycle, which I think is very compelling. Now that, of course, has strategic implications, right? And that drives the marketing requirements and the tech requirements for how we work, right? And this is sort of the world where the CDP opportunity starts coming into play. But our marketing requirements do start changing. We start moving away from campaign-oriented thinking in individual channels and isolated marketing engagement to a world in which we essentially abstract the channel off, right? We're thinking about a journey of these moments over time. We're thinking about engaging in any channel whenever we need to or whenever the customer wishes to. And we're thinking now about how marketing fits into a broader set of touch points in customer experience, marketing being a pillar of broader customer experience. And this got a big push forward, I think, during the pandemic times when a lot of companies went through very radical digital transformation, right, to accommodate a new way of engaging with customers and serving them. This then, of course, requires a technology layer. And the technology has to evolve to accommodate this as well. We have to get away from just storing data in case we ever need it, kind of a hoarding mentality of data. We have to think about how do we manage that data into customer profiles that are usable to us. We have to have a flexible architecture where we can plug and play different systems as needs evolve. And we have to get away from manual processes on the marketing operations side. We can't manage marketing with a spreadsheet or with many traditional measures anymore. We need to have automation and workflow just to help us scale up the amount of decisioning, creative content, channels, measurement that we have to undertake. And we're going to do that with a technology backbone, of course. At Forrester, we kind of break the technology down into kind of three main pillars, let's call them. You have customer understanding, which is the insights capability, brand strategy, which is essentially your marketing ops, and brand experience, which is the orchestration and delivery of an actual interaction with a customer. And so we need to fill those out so we have a complete capability for customer engagement. Sort of breaks down like this. There are subcategories within each of those pillars of capability. We believe that we don't prescribe an exact stack to every customer because your needs are different, your existing investments are different, your business model is different. But generally speaking, as a framework, you start filling these things in. It should give you the ability to engage in any touch point at any point in the customer life cycle. What gets underplayed in all of this, and where a lot of the conversations are going, and indeed probably why a lot of us are sitting in this room today, are that data becomes the foundation for this. And many companies that I talk to, indeed, have a lot of the technology already. When we peel back the onion on how we achieve more advanced strategies in customer engagement, it really becomes a data play at that point. And what we've done, you can imagine this, is just like Formula One, you create essentially what I call a perpetual motion machine of data, not just a flywheel, where we have a lot of data, which gives us the ability to do a lot of course, the management to transit storage of data. That grows, that gives us the ability, right, to have broader customer engagement, more reach, better insights, better targeting. And that, in turn, increases our engagement scale, which, of course, generates yet more data, which increases our data scale, and around and around and around it goes. Not surprising to learn that dealing with data is a challenge. Our full data set at Forrester has something like 20 different challenge areas for data. It's not just one problem or two problems or a couple problems. There are many, many challenges in handling data that you probably know very, very well, all that come in at double-digit percentages. Some of the top ones, and the ones I think are somewhat most relevant, is going left to right, is it takes too long to deliver value. There's a speed and velocity issue. You might have some of the technology to be able to handle the data, but can we do it fast enough to be in that moment with the customer? We don't have the right data management. We have data quality struggles, and we have data silos. We have the data. We might possess it somewhere in this enterprise, but in many different places, and places that are hard to get to. So the conversation has really changed. It's hard for me at Forrester to have conversations with customers about, say, technology without also having a balanced conversation about the data side of that equation. And this is the kind of different approach that we need to have, right? Really bringing these together. We need both the data to be the fuel in that technology engine to support engaging in moments. Conveniently, the CDP sort of sits at the nexus of these trends, right? Because when we look at all this, essentially becomes a game of we want more, better, faster data. And the CDP is designed to help us with that. If we think about the fully blown out technology ecosystem of marketing, again, we've got our pillars and lots of little boxes. I know it's an eye chart, don't worry too much about it. But you know intuitively, right, there's a lot of balls in the air in your marketing technology stack, a lot of those capabilities. And when we plug a CDP into that, which we've been doing for years, we've seen an evolution, and you may have experienced this in your own organization, an evolution of what the CDP can do for us. And this has been really, I think, gratifying and important to map out how the CDP has grown like as a category and a capability. We're going back a few years. I plugged it about 2018, which is when Forrester really started paying attention to the category and covering it formally. Of course, it was inducted earlier than that, but I call it the primordial CDP, and that's not to be negative. It's just that it was kind of the first iteration of what a CDP could be, right? And what we were doing is saying, look, we're going to collect some data, build some customer profiles. 95% of the time, we're going to deploy that for maybe improved messaging and email marketing. And look, most new technologies, when we get into ad tech and marketing technology, kind of the first port of call for providing value is enhanced targeting features, right? Because you can do it relatively quickly, it shows value quickly, and there's always room for enhancement and enrichment in the way we target customer engagement. So the first version of CDPs kind of accomplished this, and it worked well enough, but we knew it wouldn't end there. We knew it would keep expanding. And sure enough, a few years later, we get into 21, give or take, and we get what I call the customer CDP, where we're really using a CDP to have engagement with our customers, our known customers. The engineering of that platform, the way it handled data was really designed for the known customer. We could expand out to handling more of those customer engagement touch points and driving some data. We started seeing driving the data into some of the customer insights and analytics as well. Data science, analytics teams started getting a lot more involved in procuring as well as using and benefiting from the CDP as well. So if we move forward to approximately now, let's say I'd peg it at late 2023, we have what I call a more complete marketing CDP, where we start getting to use the CDP across the marketing lifecycle into acquisition and paid media, a broader set of insights generation. And this is really blowing out the full marketing promise. CDPs have been pretty marketing focused, and there's a lot of work to do in marketing. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's a worthy cause. We've really blown out now the marketing capability of the CDP. This has been a long time coming. I think it's great to see it, and I think it's been good for all of us. Now, as we think about what's coming forward, it probably shouldn't surprise us too much when late last year we talked to digital experience leaders, not just marketing leaders, and we said, which technologies are you going to buy over the next year or so? Number 2 was the CDP, right? Now people outside of marketing are looking at a CDP. They're probably a little bit jealous of you. They're looking, well, these guys have a CDP. That looks pretty neat. Could we have one too? I literally do get those phone calls. Marketing has a CDP. How do we use it in digital? So now we're starting to think about how do we deploy the CDP more broadly than traditional marketing across that life cycle. And again, I think this is an important pivot point for the CDP and a launching pad, right? Because we want to amortize that investment, that data asset of profiles, as broadly as possible. So I'm starting to think now about where's the CDP can it go? Essentially, the question becomes, how far can we push this thing? How far can we take it? And that's an interesting question, because we could say the future of the CDP is the future of customer experience, a bold prognostication for sure. But how much of this can we really fill it up? Start seeing the ability to deploy the CDP outside of marketing into other touch points. I do have Forrester clients actively planning for this now. It's not just an analyst or maybe a technology provider roadmap item anymore. I've got clients calling up and saying, we want to use the CDP for our broad personalization strategy, for our e-commerce, for our contact center, right? Really interesting, expanded use cases. And so I've got 4 ideas for where I think this can go. And really what I want to do is get all of us on board, thinking about broadly applying the CDP, continuing its progress and expansive trajectory. And I think getting to these new areas, these 4 new areas, is going to take work on all of our parts. I'm going to have to talk about it as an analyst. You as users and buyers of CDPs are going to have to think about how do I plan for and expand and advocate for our CDP implementation internally. Of course, our hosts or providers like Treasure Data are going to keep working on the technology foundation for a more expansive vision of the CDP. So I think if we all come together, think about where we want the CDP to go, we team up, we do some work on this, we'll come together next year and we'll see how we did. How about that? The first area where I want to expand the use of the CDP is progressing really from just data feeds, supplying data to endpoints, to really orchestrating customer journeys. So far, the CDP in general has been pretty good. An expansion of that customer profile, of course, is the ability to sync up the touches that you have with the customer, right? Start piecing together all the times we've interacted, right? So we start mapping out that journey. Where we need to go next is essentially saying, look, a customer journey is a set or an aggregation of individual moments. We want to have an orchestration feature that not just allows us to sync up, multiple touches in a channel or some of the traditional, say, campaign management-oriented orchestration features. We want to have a true journey orchestration feature, a real-time, individual-oriented and triggered decisioned engine that orchestrates journeys, takes it off of the individual endpoints, and orchestrates everything from one facility at the CDP level. Number two, you knew we were going to talk about AI. Can't be surprised. We're obligated to do it, but AI is very, very important, and it's going to be a big deal to marketing, to customer engagement, and in CDPs. The way I like to think about it is a little bit more practical terms, because there's so many ways to use AI, and it's still in development. It can get a little fuzzy sometimes, right? There's so many words talking about AI right now. I like to think about moving it towards being our personalization flywheel. How will AI help us scale up and accelerate our efforts to create relevant experiences for customers? This is going to happen over time. It will manifest within a lot of the marketing technology tools, and that's part of the CDP opportunity, is to embed these new generative AI functions within the CDP, again, in a consolidated place, rather than dispersing them among multiple tools. But right now, a lot of the interest and heat is around the creative development side. We've seen a lot of this, and that's very important. It's a great kind of first port of call for using some of these features, and that's very nice. It's also a potential outlet for expanding CDP orchestrations, get more involved in some of the content and creativity elements. But where it more directly relates to the CDP is using it to generate insights, some of the natural language query, some of these search mechanisms, some of the reporting facilities, to generate insights that are not only better, but also faster and more user-friendly. To get more involved in the marketing operations side, to help us planning, looking at the resources, coordinating schedules and so on, even campaign briefs. This could all live in a CDP centralized orchestration facility. And longer term, it dovetails back into our desire to have a singular journey orchestration feature. One of the challenges with journeys has always been that there's just so many of them, right? And they change all the time. It's hard to be effective with high-level archetype journeys. AI could be the tool that really helps us design journeys, monitor them, and orchestrate and optimize them over time to really scale up our use of journeys in a practical way. That's a lot. There's a lot of different options in front of you. I've actually gone to, you can look at this later again, but I've designed kind of a process for how we think about AI in an appropriate way in the company. And it really starts with, one, getting specific and understanding exactly how do I want to apply a generative AI function, understanding how we're going to deliver that function. You know, which technique does it use? Where is it implemented, right? Which tools are going to be within? Is it with one of our existing tools like the CDP? Are we going to implement our own models in-house? That drives, of course, then the stakeholders involved in your organization in using AI. This is not a singular marketing tool. Again, we're trying to get to production. We're trying to get past experimentation with these capabilities. Data is a huge deal. CDP has a lot to add here since it's the home for so much of our data and our customer profiles, but what's the provenance of that data? Helping us with the quality of data, garbage in, garbage out, as always. And what's the security and privacy for that data? Whenever we're talking about customer data, we have to keep that top of mind. And then how is this going to actually operate? How does it change our workflow? Something we tend not to think about until it's too late, I think, because we get so excited about the data and the tech, is how is something like a generative AI function going to change the actual workflow of designing and operating marketing? How does it change the collaboration between team members? We need to replan our actual processes to incorporate these tools, make sure the outputs are actually usable, otherwise this is just an academic exercise. We want these things to be explainable and predictable and consistent, right? Can we explain what the AI is churning out for us? And of course, we need to have transparency. We want to monitor this, make sure there aren't unintended consequences. We want to make sure that we're tracking this to business KPIs and to eventually not just being efficient, say creating more campaigns, more content with fewer hours, less time, less people, but also are we driving business KPIs and the KPIs around customer experience? Does this ultimately help our customers? 3, marketing measurement. This one's pretty new. As you may all be aware, there are certain exogenous trends like data deprecation, an umbrella term at Forrester, for the collision, right, of privacy, walled gardens, technology changes that are affecting, restricting our access to data, right, as companies. The rise of data deprecation has really kind of vaporized the way we do traditional marketing measurement. But marketing measurement in today's economic climate has actually never been more important. We've got to show the efficacy of our investments and our effort from the CDP on up. But Techniques such as traditional attribution are really struggling right now because of the loss of signal we see, right, because of data deprecation restrictions. So we're seeing a big shift in the way marketing measurement is handled. We need a system to provide the data and the algorithms, the calculations, to do a next generation of marketing measurement. I think that could be the CDP, and in fact, I'm kind of laid that challenge out there. The CDP already holds essentially the first party, right, data, which is going to become the backbone of any measurement strategy going forward. So I think we need to be thinking about how we extend the CDP to support measurement. And that would involve, of course, our organizational KPIs. We're seeing, because of struggles in attribution, a recommitment to marketing mix modeling now. How do we have the data and processing for that? And of course, there always will be some tactical measurement around campaigns and customer interactions, just to make sure operationally they're functional. We want to measure our programs and all of our tactics as well. I think the CDP can have a big part to play because of its current positioning and the expansion opportunity around the data and the centralization of that data to support measurement in the future. And then finally, enabling strategic marketing technology. What does that mean? You have a lot of marketing technology. The mistake we tend to make with marketing technology is treating it like all of our applications and tools are created equal. Of course, we need lots of different tools, all those, that big chart I showed earlier. But sometimes they can be a little bit tactical or even commoditized. Some of them are quite strategic, and that should determine how we think about them, where we invest. It's not really a question anymore, and we still do get it at Forrester, is should we do best of breed or should we do a platform or a suite? And in fact, that's kind of the wrong question to ask because no one's going to use just one tool to do everything. That doesn't exist, nor will it in our lifetimes. But nobody really wants a full best of breed approach either because that is an unmanageable amount of work, right? That's actually what most firms are kicking back on right now. They want to reduce complexity, reduce vendors, reduce cost, reduce resource needs in that marketing technology stack. So how should we be thinking about it? I've been thinking about kind of a counterintuitive approach to this, where we think about what's strategic and what's tactical in that marketing technology stack. That drives what we invest in, and I call it controlled asymmetry, which I know sounds a little bit odd. But what I'm trying to get to is what you need to own as a brand is a central core of marketing technology capabilities. There are two things that are unique to your company that you need to own that essentially becomes intellectual property to you. Your data and your ability to orchestrate that data, which I've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, right? We need to control that. We want to consolidate that to something like a CDP or in a CDP. That's what you need to own. Everything else can plug into that. So we're thinking about an architecture now that has a controlled core of the data and orchestration. Could be a CDP. Funny how that works out. And then you're integrating all the insights, engagement, strategy components into it. What I really like about this gives you a lot of flexibility for the future, right? You decide you want to have a different execution tool, you want to expand into more touch points. All you do is really plug those in. You don't have to re-platform that core of capability that you own as a business. So we think about how the CDP can contribute to this. We go back to our view of that ecosystem. And so the CDP can really become a proxy, right, with its data and integration capabilities to bring the components of the stack together to support, again, our AI investments, applying the data to our measurement and AI functions. And of course, providing functional investment on the data side and the orchestration side. So I like positioning the CDP as not only an investment that yields benefits today, but an investment in the future. I think we shouldn't waste a good crisis. I think there's enough exogenous change happening in the marketplace that we're going to have to make changes to the way marketing and customer engagement work, one way or the other, whether or not we like it. So let's make the changes that we want to make that help us in the future. I know you could probably pick off, there's 10 things you've wanted to do for a very, very long time. This is your opportunity, kind of this once-in-a-generation shift where we have things like data deprecation, the regulations, the economic factors that are driving a demand to evolve our technology and our data capabilities. Let's really use this time to get the most out of it. Second, I want you to think about meeting the landscape where it is, right? Think about an ecosystem of tools, not just one magical tool that does everything or going fully best of breed in your tools. Focus on data and integration as the secret sauce that brings this ecosystem together. And plan for agility. I think if you build kind of a future-proofed approach where you focus on owning, controlling, and maximizing the data and orchestration core, you're going to be agile for everything else that you have to adjust and build both today as well as in the future. Then finally, let's work together and let's push the CDP further, right? Let's really have an innovation trajectory with the CDP to take it into new places. What it's done in the past is good. What it's doing now is impressive and great. We can take this further and maximize this asset. Let's think about how we're going to use the CDP for journey orchestration, AI, measurement, and ecosystem support. I'd also be interested to hear about other areas where you think you can take the CDP, right? We want to continue to push that capability and make the most of this opportunity. So with that, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Treasure Data. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.